Hey, what's crack-a-lackin', ladies and gents, boys and girls? It is your host with the most, the voice of resistance, the embodiment of persistence, the one and only Metal Fingers. I just wanted to do a bit of a demo for you guys. Yeah, let's jump into a map and see how it looks. And then we can have a bit of a look at the gear after. We'll zoom around and we'll get a bit nutty with it, and we'll see how far we can push it. Hopefully we don't die, but hey, if we do, hey, that's part of the fun, right? That's why we're here. It is a demonstration after all. As you can see, there is really no lack of damage or AoE clear. But this build has a lot of holes. The AoE clear is unbelievable, you know, when you start to herd in mobs like that. You notice now our Golem and our Mercenary are dead here. So we've got no lower res proc from our Merc, we've also got no Conviction Aura. And we're still doing 160,000 plus DPS. This is a good demonstration of the limitations of the setup though. It's a physically light immune enemy. And as you can see, we are doing almost nothing to him, right? The knockback keeps us safe, but it's not a very effective killing machine when it comes to that combination. So the single target damage is decent. Alright, let's have a bit of a look over our gear. As you can see, we've already run into the first issue I have with this build, which is the Infinity Aura Iron Golem that we're getting from the Metal Grid. As you can see, the Infinity Iron Golem got absolutely annihilated. If you're building your character for ladder, I think it's a little unrealistic. You know, losing your Iron Golem like that would be really rough, which is the first problem I have with this build. So Crackleshot, obviously, the new unique blade bow, and we're using that in combination with Aether Wing, the new unique razor arrows. We're using the Metal Grid amulet, mostly for the Iron Golem, but it's also got the ore resistances on it. Then we're using dual SOJs, mostly for the lightning damage. We've got Gore Riders, then I'm using T-Gods, plus the lightning skills, and again, massive boost to our lightning damage. Then we're using Laying of Hands. This is mostly for the increase to our attack speed. The extra damage versus demons is definitely welcomed. Then we've got the Giant Skull. You can't really go past Giant Skull. It's incredible. And then for our armor, we've got Tyrael's Might. I went for Tyrael's Might in this situation because it was a very simple source for Canopy Frozen. The all resistances are really, really nice. The plus to strength is really good. The damage to demons and undead is amazing. And faster run walk. Faster run walk feels so nice in PD2. And it feels even nicer if you're on an Amazon, right? In the sockets, it's all facets. They're all lightning facets all the way. I put the two runes in there because arrows behave like shields. I needed the resistances somewhere on my build. The thing is, runes in armor and helms, as opposed to shields, give less all res. So I decided to go with the quiver, because it's an extra 7 all resistances per rune. So it's an extra 14 all res, just with those two runes. It's essentially nearly an extra rune. Now, looking at our inventory, pretty straightforward for the most part. Torch, Annie. This small charm, I just threw this on because I wanted the cold damage for crowd control. And as far as our large charms go, very, very straightforward. It's all just flat and percentage-based lightning skill damage the whole way through our inventory. And then, obviously, the Infinity Iron Golem. Okay, so looking at our skill tree, we'll start with bow and crossbow skills. We've got one in each prerequisite, and then we've maxed strafe. Then moving on to our jab and spear skills, We've got our prerequisites for Power Strike and Lightning Bolt, and we've maxed both Power Strike and Lightning Bolt. The reason for this is these are synergies for Lightning Fury, so you're getting bonus damage from your Crackleshot Lightning Fury procs by investing points into the synergies. So max Power Strike and Lightning Bolt. And now we'll move on to our passive tree. 1 point wonders, dodge and evade. I think it's worth putting a point into Decoy and Valkyrie as well. And we've maxed penetrate, and all our extra points went into pierce, just to max out our pierce chance. More pierce, more procs. All right, moving from there over to our stats. This is not optimized. I just invested enough strength and dex basically so I could test a bunch of different gear. I was testing things like steel rends, so I needed a bit more extra strength. You could definitely optimize this better, but basically enough strength and dex to equip all my gear, and then I've just dumped the rest of the points into vitality. Very standard stuff. So we're using the Act 1 Fire Mercenary, and it's mainly for the Vigor Aura. Plus Spitter. We're using Lava Gouts, Nosferatu Coil, plus Strength. That is important. It's also the reason I'm using the next piece of gear. Templar's Might has an unbelievably high strength requirement on it. There's a few different ways you can get around that. In this situation, I'm stacking a massive amount of plus strength in my gear. If you had poor rolls, another alternative would be use a minus requirements jewel in your Templar's Might. But we'll get to the sockets in a second. Then for our helm, Giant Skull, Bannerlords, Warbolts. Looking at the sockets in our Mercenary, 2 Umrunes, again, the resistances. Quivers act like shields. We need 7 total Ruby Jewels of Fervor to hit our final AAS frame breakpoint. It doesn't really matter where they go unless we're looking to use minus requirements jewels in our Templar's Might. So for that reason, I would encourage players to socket your Giant Skull and your Pus Spitter. The other jewels in this setup are just max damage ED jewels. When you start to look at this character in detail, it starts to fall apart really, really, really fast. I'm not capped on cold res. I'm also not capped on poison res. I have no physical damage reduction. My FHR breakpoint is almost non-existent. I'm also not running any life leech whatsoever. That's why I don't like this build. The DPS, unbelievable. But it's a bit of a glass cannon, and I don't think it's very realistically playable as a ladder character. So, with that setup out of the way, let's look at an alternative setup and something a little more realistic on a typical ladder season. All right. Got milk. This is no golem. There's no golem here. Pay attention to how many pots we go through in this run as well. So we'll go zoom through this map quickly, do a bit of a demo, you know, poke along, play like a typical Boazon, and then we can play like a total psychopath. Also amped as well. This hell temperatures make things a bit spooky. As you can see, the damage isn't that much different, provided the Mercenary is getting the lower res proc off. When she's not getting the lower res proc off, it's usually just because everything's dead first anyway, right? But when she does get it off, the damage is very comparable still. So the Iron Golem, as amazing as it is, and as much as it is an increase to our DPS, and it does help with the burst damage, it allows us to run and gun a little more. So it does significantly increase your clear speed. I think realistically, for a ladder character, it's just not worth it. So that's a lightning immune enemy. So that's purely physical damage, right?
Work our way up towards the top lane again. Look at that. This whole tempest is... Ugh. So as much as it's less damage, we're not lacking damage, are we? Right? Like, I'm certainly,
As much as it's less damage, I'm not missing the Iron Golem in any way, shape, or form. The Conviction Aura is instant. And that's where the initial burst damage using the Iron Golem is better. If you are going for absolute maximum balls to the walls DPS, that is what you're going to be going for. But I don't think it's very realistic. But that was Cows. Cows is all melee monsters. It's nice and safe, right? Let's go dive into a map. It's a little spookier. Lots more ranged monsters, lots more physical damage, right? Alright, let's get stuck in. Yeah, we'll blast through this map. This will be interesting because you'll be able to see the boss fight with Indio as well, which will give you a bit more of an idea of the strength of the build. Saying the survivability. Because there's ranged monsters in this map, I'm more likely to take a few hits as well. As you can see from the monster types though, this is the sort of map where all that added damage to demons from the Tyraels and the laying of hands is really paying dividends. Lots of demons in Throne of Insanity, right? As you can see, that added leech life from the BK ring helps keep us really, really safe when we're playing spicy. Which means we can push maps faster.
Holy crap, that rock! My god!
This map gives a really, really good demonstration as to how important some form of leech is on this build. And a big part of the reason that I didn't like the glass cannon setup that I was running previously. The damage was sensational. Visually, it was amazing. You know, watch the entire screen fall over. It was great, but losing your Infinity Iron Golem every 10 seconds does not sound like a fun time as far as the ladder character, right? I mean, this is much more realistic. But as you can see, we have no problem with sustain. So just a quick look at our gear setup, just the differences between this setup and the previous setup I was running. So we've still got the CTA and the Liliths on Switch. Still using Giant Skull, Tyraels, T-Gods, a single SOJ, Laying of Hands, and obviously the Bow and Quiver are the same. Most of the inventory is the same except for these. But what we've done, we've swapped one of the Stones of Jordan out for a Bull Cathos Wedding Band. This is mainly for the leech. The life is also nice. I think that there's room for improvement on this, but for the sake of beta testing, it makes things simple. But you could probably get a better, you know, rare ring with dual leech, all res, max damage attack rating or something like that, or a good crafted ring would be much better. We also swapped the Gore Riders out with Shadow Dancers. The main reason for this is the faster hit recovery. The Dex is kind of nice as well, and the curse resistance too, which definitely helps when you're dealing with things like amplified damage. And because we're not relying on the Infinity Iron Golem anymore, we swapped out our Metal Grid for a High Lord's Wrath. So we do lose the All-Res mod, but we trade it for 1 to 300 lightning damage, Deadly Strike, and IAS. The IAS is really nice when we're in situations where we're facing enemies with Holy Freeze. Holy Freeze has two parts to it. It's got a freezing effect, but it's also got a slow effect. The slow effect will still apply to you even if you've got Cannot Be Frozen. So that 20 IAS just makes sure that we're always hitting that final IAS frame breakpoint. Not to mention, some maps also have -2 attack speed, cast speed, and faster hit recovery, things like that. So that just makes sure we're always at that final breakpoint. And because we lost the All Resistances mod from the Metal Grid, and we're not running something like a Maras, we are compensating. We swapped 4 of our flat and percent-based lightning damage large charms with some All-Res Grand Charms. This has just got some flat lightning damage on it to help. And this has got faster hit recovery, which allows us to snag an extra FHR breakpoint. To help with our resistances, I've also got a 10 poison res and an 11 cold res small charm, and again, just some more flat lightning damage. And then going over our stat and skill trees for our alternate setup, it's all exactly the same. It's the same stat distribution, the same skill distribution. And the merc setup is exactly the same. Alright, let's step it up a notch. How not to do Uber Ancients. So let's take it up a notch and let's go look at Uber Tristram. So as you can see, this character is quite effective at map clearing. The bossing abilities of it, not so much, but the area of effect clear that we're getting from the Lightning Fury procs and the way we're leaning into the lightning damage is really, really nice for the area of effect. Blood Moon maps are amazing. Thrones of Insanity feel incredible. I haven't tested all the map types, but from what I've tested so far, this build performs great in maps. I think it does leave a little bit to be desired in bossing, but it's also not set up for bossing. I think if you lent into perhaps Magic Arrow or Guided Arrow, and then swapped a few pieces of gear around, I think you'd be more than capable of bossing on this character as well. Anyway, guys, that's going to be it for now. Hope you enjoyed this video. I don't think this is absolute maximum best in slot, best of the best setup. I do think that there's a lot of room for improvement. Namely, we don't have any slams across our gear, right? Worldstone shards and corruptions are blocked in closed beta, so we're not able to test that. But I'm sure with slams in the right places that this could, it would only get better from here. This is just a bit of an example, bit of a test and what you should expect. I do think that this setup is pretty close to maxed out. However, I'm not entirely convinced. I'm the sort of person that always believes that there's room for improvement. So if anyone's got any ideas or any suggestions that they'd like to share, feel free to leave a comment. And I appreciate you all stopping by. Hope you enjoyed this video. Take care, guys.